We all make mistakes. Small ones, big ones, and the longer you live, the more mistakes you will make. Unless you learn from them, because if you know better, you're more likely to do better. Unless you're really stubborn and not very open to feedback. Today, I'm starting a series of short videos about many of the voiceover mistakes I have made in my long career, so you don't have to make these mistakes. I want you to benefit from my biggest blunders. In July of this year, 2023, I turned 60. I was 17 years old when I presented my first radio show for Dutch national radio. It was the beginning of a career in front of the microphone that lasted over 25 years. After that, I became a media trainer and communications coach, and after I left the Netherlands and moved to the United States, I became a full-time voiceover talent around 2005. Having started so young has several advantages. I had the opportunity to make lots of mistakes and learn from the best. When I tell you about a mistake I made and how I fixed it, keep in mind that this tells you something about my approach, which doesn't have to be your approach. You may have a response or solution that's very different, that is just as valid or even better. As with everything I put on social media, I'm not telling you the truth, but my truth, my subjective truth. You don't have to agree with me. Finding your own answers is more important than doing what I did. My self-esteem does not depend on you liking me or agreeing with me, okay? One of the most frustrating things about reading or watching information about voiceovers has to do with getting contradictory advice. One person says this thing and another person says that thing, which is completely different. Which one is the right solution? Which one is true or can both be true? I believe that some things can both be true and untrue at the same time. Listen to the following sentence, okay? Running your own business is the most fun and rewarding thing you will ever do. Running your own business is the most fun and rewarding thing you'll ever do. Is it really? It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Yes, running your own business can be very gratifying, but also a huge burden. So is it true, untrue, or can both be true? Here's another statement that can be confusing. Which is better, coffee or tea? What if you prefer chocolate milk? What if you like all three of them? Why do you have to pick a favorite? Before I start talking about my biggest blunders, I want you to make peace with the fact that ideas don't have to be either or, right or wrong, or good or bad. It all depends on the context and the person. Now let's talk about the word mistakes. From a young age, we are taught that mistakes are a bad thing. Making a mistake means that you have failed. Or worse, that you are a failure. I think it's time to reframe that. I remember when I started recording audiobooks, I was far from perfect. So at the end of each chapter, I ended up with lots of missed takes. Quite often, I would read what I thought was written on the page instead of the actual words. I would mispronounce things or choose an intonation that didn't make any sense. Or we would hear lots of annoying mouth noises that would ruin the recording. Listening to all these missed takes was quite disheartening. People had told me I was supposed to be good at this, yet I was messing up left and right. Quite often, I questioned myself, shouldn't I be doing something useful with my life instead of trying to be an audiobook narrator? But you know what? Listening to my blunders made me more aware of what I was doing. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. By becoming more aware, I could prevent things from happening. I learned how to focus on what was written on the page. I made a list of hard-to-pronounce words and I practiced them beforehand, and I made sure I knew what was coming in the story so I would get the intonation right. All of this paid off. Making these mistakes taught me how to become a better narrator, and very soon the list of missed takes at the end of each chapter became shorter and shorter, and it took me less time to complete an audiobook. So here's my takeaway. The biggest blunder you can make is not learning from your mistakes. Mistakes are not failures. They are learning opportunities. Now, what sort of mistakes will we be talking about in this series? My biggest blunders are not things like showing up late for a recording session, or talking badly about a script while the microphone is open and the client is listening, or eating a big black bean burrito with lots of garlic before sharing a small recording booth with someone else. Been there, done that. My biggest blunders about things I used to believe about the business, things that I found to be a mistake. My blunders are about ideas, about certain beliefs and how they affected my business each and every day. And my guess is that you may share some of these beliefs because I see them in action every single day. You may say that ideas are nothing more than thoughts in our head, but never underestimate the power of ideas. Rosa Parks once had an idea. Martin Luther King had a dream, and Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Everything they did started with an idea and a belief that it was possible to achieve the impossible. For instance, if you deep down believe that you don't deserve to be successful or happy or well off for whatever reason, this will permeate everything you do, and it will lead to self-sabotage. That's when limited beliefs turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. You can learn a lot of techniques, spend a fortune on seminars and coaching, but as long as you don't address that limiting belief, you will never be able to stand in your strength and have faith in yourself. The voiceover business is tough, not gonna lie. There's lots of competition, and you can't get by on competence alone. You need confidence to carve out a career that will outlast the arrival of AI. You need to believe. I define a belief as a feeling of certainty. To our brain, it doesn't matter if that belief is correct or incorrect, if it makes sense or not. It has nothing to do with logic. A belief is just something that feels familiar, something we don't have to question because we know it is true. This series is about things I thought were true and that turned out to be false. How did I find out? Because operating out of that belief didn't get me the results I was expecting to get. But once I changed my belief, my reality started to change. Tomorrow, I'll talk about my first big blunder, believing that if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. See you then.